Hi everyone, welcome to the first time that I'm trying out CoronaChats with Dr. Joss. I am sure that you will all be so generous with your critiques of me since I've never done anything like this before. In this first video, I want to start just by making sure we're all on the same page to understand what is COVID-19, how does it impact you, who's at risk, how is it spread, why is it here, and then in their future videos we can go deeper into a lot of those things. But for today, we're just going to do the 101 quick, what is this? What are the basics that you probably already know from the news and the radio, but we're just going to start things off. So, COVID-19. COVID-19 is a name that the World Health Organization gave to a virus that is circulating around the world. It started off in Hubei in Wuhan province in China, and now the big hotspots are Iran, Italy, and probably the US. COVID-19 is a type of coronavirus. And I know that a lot of the news and stuff makes it sound like this is the coronavirus, but in truth, there's a lot of coronaviruses that circulate all the time. Some of them are a pretty regular part of life in Manitoba. We have coronavirus that comes around every year. It's dangerous for some people, but certainly not like what we're seeing right now. And you may have heard of MERS-CoV, which is Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus. That one's a more severe one that's, as it sounds, mostly in the Middle East, but we have seen some cases make their way over here and can cause some pretty severe outcomes. And then I'm sure you all are familiar with SARS-CoV, maybe not the CoV part, but Sudden Acute Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus was something that circulated several years ago and caused a lot of death, which was horrible in that people were dying, but it didn't spread very well because people tended to die before they could spread it, unlike this one. So we didn't see nearly as many cases, and because we didn't have as many cases, we actually saw a lot fewer deaths than we're seeing with the current situation, because there's so much more of it getting around. The US at last count has something like 50,000 confirmed cases. So because this version of coronavirus is new, it seems to have morphed a little bit. None of us are immune to it. We've never faced anything like this before, so nobody has a built-up immunity, and there's no vaccine. And unlike some of the previous epidemics or pandemics we've worried about, like H1N1 for example, it's not an influenza virus, and so we can't use all that knowledge that we have about making flu vaccines towards this. We kind of have to start from scratch. The coronaviruses typically start in animals, and usually they spread from animals to people, but then they can't go from person to person. But every once in a while with MERS-CoV, SARS, and COVID-19, somehow the virus mutates in a way that it can be spread from person to person. The way it's spread is mostly coughing, sneezing, and touching. So if you're pretty far away from someone, you shouldn't be able to get it from them. But if you're within 2 meters and someone coughs on you, there's going to be droplets in the air. Even if you don't feel anything, there's going to be little droplets that contain virus in the air that can land on you. And maybe they land on your hands, maybe they land on your body, maybe you breathe it in immediately. But if it's on your hands and then you touch your face, that's one way you can get infected. But if you're more than 2 meters away from somebody, it's very unlikely that they're going to be able to get the virus all the way to you. But we'll talk about where it can be, where it can live, how long it lasts in the air in a future video. What are the symptoms? So most people get fever and cough. So it's not the same as having a cold. Some people do get some like runny nose and stuffed nose and that sort of stuff. But fever and cough are by far the most common symptoms. And so that can be helpful to try to figure out if it's truly COVID-19 or just rhinovirus, which is the common cold. But it's only helpful. It's not definitive. It doesn't say for sure whether or not what you have is COVID-19, but people tend to be sicker and get that fever, which most people don't get a fever when they have the common cold. And we worry particularly about people who are over 65 or people with multiple health conditions. So maybe diabetes, heart disease, and certainly lung disease. We worry about them, not that they're more likely to get the infection, but that they're more likely to get really sick if they do. So those are the people we worry about ending up in the ICU and dying. And so that's who we're trying to protect. For the most part, kids not at such a high risk, unless they're under 1 year old, then we worry about them as well. So the last thing I want to say just briefly is the same thing you're hearing all over the news. What do you do to prevent it? So physical distancing, and I'll talk about why I said physical, not social, in a different video. Stay home, especially if you're sick. So stay home anytime that you can, but especially if you're sick, and don't spend any time with any of those vulnerable populations. Wash your hands and wash them really well. Wash them all the time. And cough into your sleeve. Those are the big things. I know you hear it on the news all the time, but truly, those are the best ways to prevent it. So I will go into more detail on all of that, but we're already past 5 minutes, and I was told that 30 seconds to 5 minutes is the most people are going to watch. So I will talk to you again in our next video.